I see my two other guests, extraordinary men here. Um, Gentlemen, how are you doing this morning? You doing okay?
Fair.
What do you say? Fair. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. We have Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, Chief Dennis Fritz. And just to give a little bio, Dennis Fritz, he's a retired command chief master sergeant of the United States Air Force. He was former director of the Eisenhower Media Network with the mission to promote peace, diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as a principal senior advisor for the 4-star commanders of Pacific Air Forces and Air Force Space Command. He also held additional duties as senior enlisted advisor the commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. He is author of the book, Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. And of course, we have Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. He is former distinguished professor or visiting professor of government and public policy at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. He also taught for 6 years at the University Honors Program at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He was also, and probably best known as retired United States Army Colonel and former Chief of Staff to the United States Secretary of State, Colin Powell. I am very happy that both of you are with me, especially with the subject matter that we are confronting. First and foremost, thank you for joining me. I have to hit this subject first, since this was the first thing. I guess this happened yesterday, and there's an article that's piggybacking this that I really want to get your take on. So, of course, Qatar was hit. Doha specifically. I strongly suspect Donald Trump lured those leaders or Hamas political bureau in because they were effectively reviewing the documentation or the agreement that Donald Trump gave them. Donald Trump then piggybacked that with a huge amount of pressure saying, you better take my deal, you better take my deal. They go to Doha, or they're in Doha, they're reviewing it, and all of a sudden they get a strike by Israel. It kills many, some of them survive. And of course, Qatar and the Prime Minister of Qatar is very upset over this, considering the severe violation to issues of sovereignty. Now, it is curious to me as to why Qatar thought they were different, which is one topic I want to get into. But I want to play this part of his speech after he got hit. And I want to get your take on this part of the speech, where he is effectively talking about retaliation and is even talking about the entire region should get involved in order to push back on quote unquote Israeli aggression. This is the Prime Minister of Qatar, and I'm going to let this play. It's slightly long, but it'll make sense.
Target its territories and will reserve the right to retaliate and will take all the needed measures to retaliate, and under the directives of His Highness the Emir, the security of the city and the residents is our top priority, and based on that, as of tomorrow, God willing, we will review all the policies and the directives in order to deter such actions and measures in the future so that it cannot happen again. And this will be also the committee will be headed by State Minister Mohammed Al Khalifi, who will take all the needed measures in order to retaliate and to respond to this attack, against this attack. The Israeli attack that took place today in the state of Qatar, we can only call it as a state terrorism that is being exerted by someone like Netanyahu, given his attempts and his policies as he tries to threaten the regional security. This is only a clear message to the whole region, and this message says that there is one player, and there's also a disrespect to all the policies and also a violation to the sovereignty of all the countries and the states. Netanyahu said himself that he will reshape the Middle East. Does he mean that he's also going to reshape the Gulf region? I think that we have reached a decisive moment. There should be a retaliation from...
Right there. So I'm fascinated by that comment and by this statement in its entirety. We've been attacked. Netanyahu is saying he's going to reshape the Middle East. This also obviously includes the Gulf states. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the map of Greater Israel, but yes, it includes the Gulf states. The thing that I get with this, though, is the Gulf states have sit there and watched their Muslim Arab brothers get slaughtered, murdered, killed, starved, and raped in a brutal, vicious genocide that has gone on for 3 years. Qatar has helped pay for the destruction of Syria, which has allowed ethnic cleansing of Alawites, Christians, Druze, etc., by monsters that have effectively taken over and has run roughshod over that state. Qatar soft helped Israel as they bombed Iran, didn't have too many comments to say or anything much to say about the fact that they were doing so. And now they get hit after watching Lebanon being occupied, Syria being occupied, and they're shocked. And not just shocked, he's looking around saying, hey, we all now should get involved. Is anybody else going to get involved in this? Meaning, are any other Gulf states going to get involved to defend the integrity of Qatar? And then either one of you can answer this.
Well, Jamal, I'll start off if you're ready for this.
Please.
Got to get a little background here and a little history. And I'm not going to go back too far. I could go back to the assassination of Soleimani in Iraq in Trump's first term.
Yes.
But I'm going to go back to what Gilbert Doctorow just talked about on Judge Napolitano's show, and I think is pretty reputable information. And Doctorow reported, without mentioning names, on a conversation he had recently with a German parliamentarian who has spent a lot of his life for Germany in Iran. And this is the story that Doctorow conveyed to Napolitano's audience. What happened when we did the notoriously violative of international law and all humanity, in my mind, attack on Iran, it was a consequence of this. Bibi Netanyahu got on the phone with Donald Trump and told him that he was about to launch a nuclear weapon on Iran's nuclear facilities. Whether it was a bluff to get the action that followed, or whether it was reality, no one will ever know. But what Donald Trump did was tell him, don't do that. I'll take care of it for you. Thus, fast forward to the B-2 bombers and all the rest that dropped bombs on Iran's nuclear facilities. We also accompanied that bombing, and I knew this myself, with a warning to Iran that the attacks were coming. Thus, they were able to move most of the critical elements from Natanz, Fordo, and elsewhere, Isidore, and preserve them. And they had little loss of life, and the bombing was really quite feckless. It was a demonstration of American power, if you will, but it was really quite feckless. Fast forward to this one. Bibi Netanyahu does not want these negotiations in Doha, or anywhere else for that matter, to succeed. Bibi wants to continue the war and kill every single solitary Palestinian man, woman, child, beast, whatever he can before any kind of end. And he wants to destroy Hamas utterly, which of course he's failing at demonstratively. And so he's got to double down and triple down on that strategic objective. He's never going to achieve it, but he's got to act like he's going to. Furthermore, as you pointed out in your question, he wants more than just Gaza. He wants the West Bank. He wants Jerusalem whole for a new Israeli Jewish temple built on top of the third or fourth holiest site in Islam, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And he wants Syria, and he wants much more than just the Golan Heights, and he wants Lebanon, and he will proceed apace to get that. So let's just look at this one. First of all, there is no way Israeli strike aircraft, or missiles for that matter, could enter Qatari airspace without the United States knowing. No way, period. So we either did what I'm hearing we did. I have no real confirmation of this from DOD, but I'm hearing this from reliable sources. We put up a combat air patrol, actually. We didn't put up fighters or anything like that. That would have been too obvious. We put up some ash and trash aircraft who flew around in circles and made sure that the airspace was safe for Israel to enter it. Not only that, we probably expedited what was happening with regard to targeting and with regard to the flight paths over other people's territory and that sort of thing. So we were complicit. There's no question in my military mind that we were complicit, just as I described we were majorly complicit in the heinous strike in the middle of negotiations on Iran. So how did this happen becomes my question as a member of the military who knows how the system works. I mean, I'm talking about having practiced it myself for at least 10 years when I crossed into lieutenant colonelcy and then colonelcy. Here's how it works. You either give the unified command commander, in this case, the central command commander, permission to act within an envelope of concept, and you don't challenge him as long as he's acting within that envelope, or you micromanage him. You give him command and direction for everything he does, no matter what it is, no matter how small. I suspect that the former is what has been given to the central command commander just based on the situation there and our interest in it. And let me back up and tell you my thoughts again about who's poodle. Israel does not control the United States. The United States controls Israel for its colonial purposes in the Levant, period. So put that as a backdrop. We're orchestrating everything. Now, the question becomes, in a military sense, a tactical, operational sense, did the unified command commander, the central command commander, forward in the region, did he order this complicity and maybe back brief Pete Hegseth and get tentative approval, or maybe even not with that? Or did Donald Trump or Hegseth or both of them actually communicate to the central command commander that within the system, they were to do what they could to protect the strike? In any way you couch it, we were complicit, regardless of the president's apologies or seeming apologies. And they might indicate another problem with the system, and that is that the president was expressing genuine surprise and anger because he didn't know. That's the sum of it.
That's even worse, if that's true. I mean, it follows Trump's MO, I guess is my point. Chief Fritz, I want to bring you in on this. I mean, if you remember with Soleimani was going to peace talks when they murdered him. Iran was in peace talks when they bombed Iran and they tried the decapitation strike. And here we are again, Hamas, peace talks, and another strike. I have a hard time believing Trump wasn't in on it. And Trump didn't know, considering this just seems to be his MO. Chief Fritz, give me your take on this.
Jamal, can you hear me okay? Since I haven't spoke yet. Okay, good. Well, let me do this. As I've mentioned before in the past, I can give you assumptions, opinions, and facts. And let me just give you a couple of facts first. One, let's all remember, which has happened to be today, where we're honoring those that passed away on 9/11. Let's remember that date, and let's remember October the 7th. Larry alluded to, hey, I won't give you a lot of history, but he said that we somewhat Bibi Netanyahu and his plans. Well, this goes all the way back to 9/11. You alluded to my book, Daily Betrayal, The Truth of Why We Invaded Iraq. Larry mentioned that Bibi warned us or pressured us to hate he would use a nuclear weapon. Trump said, don't do that. We'll take care of that. When 9/11, it gave us the rationale and justification to go in to Iraq. Why? That's something that Bibi Netanyahu has always wanted to do. Larry laid out his ambitions. These ambitions have always existed. You hear it in Bibi's own words as he's presented himself to our Congress many times. This has always been his goal. So back during a Bush administration, George W. Bush, that administration said, Bibi, we'll take care of this. Bibi has always wanted to go in, as Larry alluded to, and just destroy, kill, maim, and put all those people in displacement. We said, no, we can't do that. The Iraq war was based on Bibi's ambitions. We will not go in and just arbitrarily kill every Palestinian and anybody who got in our way. What we will do, we will go after those countries, those ones that are resisting us. When you talk about the Gulf nations that they think they were immune from this, we were going to go after those countries that are resisting us and their leaders. Saddam, Iraq, Assad, Syria, the Ayatollah in Iran. Well, guess what? 2 of the 3 are gone. We didn't go in and just brutally kill innocent women and children as being done by Bibi, which he's always wanted to do. But we did kill innocent Iranians. More importantly, innocent Iraqis. Killed many of those, destroyed their infrastructure. So these are facts. This is something Bibi has always wanted to do, and he's doing it now. Now, Larry is, he's always said that, hey, it's the United States that's pushing the buttons. Well, as I've told Larry, and I'll tell others, Larry truly believes that. He's someone has me convinced. I will tell you, as I've stated before, there's no doubt in the beginning when we helped create the first country to actually recognize Israel as a state, if you will. That was our goal, to be able to control the Middle East. Now what I think has happened, we have one Bibi Netanyahu who's always felt he's the Messiah of Israel that gotten out of control, and we can't control him. He knows how to push our buttons and threaten us, if you will. Hey, I'm going to use a nuclear weapon against Iran. Hey, I'm going to go in and destroy the entire Palestinians. Whoa, no, you can't do that. So I think we have a person that's gotten out of control. I think he will run over any country. No country in the Middle East is immune from him. And I think we don't know how to control Bibi Netanyahu. Now, it goes back to this question, how much does Trump know? Well, Trump is no different than any other president. Bibi ran over all our presidents. So that's what I will tell you for a fact. Now, the assumptions and opinions, I don't know who knew what and when. I don't know that. We can only assume. Only those that were in the office, that were in the situation room, or who were in the tank in the Pentagon knows the truth right now. Hopefully one day that will come out.
Mm-hmm. So apparently, from my understanding, the Gulf states have started to, I guess, on some level feel trapped. They thought they were secure, meaning they thought that, hey, we're paying money for the stuff that happened elsewhere. We didn't realize that we were not protected in the context of Israel bombing our countries also. Trump hit the prime minister on the head, told him, hey, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen again. And of course, you have to take the word of a man who lured people in to be murdered as, your security blanket in this case. An article came out of the New York Times, I believe it was the Times, that asked this question about the Saudis and the UAE, Qatar, effectively saying, we clearly are not safe from Israel at this point. And the U.S. is not going to protect us, meaning the money that we pay to the U.S. for protection doesn't include Israel. We are fair game also. What can they do about this, though? I mean, they've locked themselves into this kind of relationship with the United States. A, are they going to respond? And if not, how do they prevent this from happening again?
Hey, let me just say one statement, and then I'll let Larry take this on, but I can just say this real quickly. There's something, I don't know if we were with you, Jamal, or somebody else, but there's something I will tell you that's been happening. What's going to happen? We're going to push more countries towards Russia and China. And it's been stated in the past by a lot of experts, we're going to slowly be the isolated state, if you will, the isolated country. So what's going to happen? What can they do? We're going to slowly push them, like other countries, towards Russia and China. Mark my word on that.
Colonel Wilkerson, are they going to be too freaked out to do that? Meaning, are they so dependent on the U.S. for their very existence, as Trump mocked Saudi Arabia one day, that they will be willing to make that transition in the way that some of these other countries are?
Well, there's no question that Riyadh, and to a lesser extent, the other Gulf Cooperation Council countries have been exploring the possibilities. Riyadh in particular has been exploring the possibilities with both Russia and China. As Colin Powell used to say, and he sometimes would actually look at Bandar, Prince Bandar, who was then the long-serving ambassador for Saudi Arabia to Washington, and say, isn't that right? You will bet on a lot of horses, and then when you see who's going to win, you shift your money to the winner.
Right.
Smile from Bandar, but that was really Colin Powell's appreciation of the way the Saudis operated, always looking at the money side of everything and looking at the House of Saud and their control over what is a restive Arab population in other respects. But all that said, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And I don't think it's going to happen precipitately. It's going to take a lot more of U.S. malfeasance, if you will, before they abandon the horse they know for the horses they don't know. Look at what Saudi Arabia has invested in the United States right now. It's huge, and what they get from us in return for that. I think the situation is probably going to be a little more fraught with tactical moves in the next few months, the most important of which will be strategic and obviate all those plans for the tactical moves. And that is a war with Iran. Because as Dennis said, this plan is unfolding more or less in accordance with the neoconservative, ultra right-wing Christian fundamentalist dispensationalists who are now allied with the neoconservatives. And they're allied with the globalists who want Israel to continue to do what it's doing in order to change the entire complexion of the Levant, the entire complexion. Oh, no, I don't mean to say just for nothing, in order to protect the huge fossil fuel reserves in that region. Right now, Iraq is poised to surpass Saudi Arabia in terms of production capacity. The only thing stopping them at present is money and the ability to build out their infrastructure. They have more oil. So it's still about the same old game of Persian Gulf oil, but it's also about other things like what Dennis just described, this clean break strategy, this strategy for the Levant that has been implemented for so long now, hasn't finished yet. And Iran is the next target. And Bibi is on track, both politically and militarily. He's losing politically. At any minute, he could be unseated. And he's losing militarily. And he's doubling down, tripling down on this defeat against Hamas and other powers in the region simply because he has no other place to go. Where does he have a place to go that will be existential for Israel and perhaps even for the empire? And that is Iran, the last and final target of consequence for this strategy, which is still being implemented. Donald Trump, notwithstanding, it's still being implemented. If he goes to war with Iran, all bets are off for Israel's survival of that, because Iran is now prepped to the maximum to destroy Israel conventionally, not nuclear, conventionally. And guess what? They have in their back pocket now Moscow 100%, and they have China standing behind Moscow. The systems that are going into Iran right now are state of the art. They are the best the Russians and Chinese can offer, and the training is going on 24/7. It'll be a disaster for Israel. And then comes the consequence, because Trump will find once again that he can't say no to Bibi. Right. And we will go into Iran. Why? Not because Bibi has led us. Yes, tactically he has, but because that's what these people want to do. They want to finish the strategy by taking down the regime in Iran. And if it has to be with military force, so be it. And Bibi will open that avenue, and we will follow him right into it. And I think that's probably a 10-year war, the consequences of which will make Iraq and Afghanistan combined look like child's play. And we'll come out of that with a disappearing empire par excellence. It will be the end of our presence in the Middle East.
Wait, so just to be clear, do you think this is boots on the ground also? When you say war, you mean full-blown?
That's the only way you're going to do it. We'll try air power first. We'll fly to Al Udeid. We'll fly off carriers in the northern Indian Ocean. We'll put everything we possibly can in there, but it won't do it. Jamal, the whole history of air power says all you do is piss people off, and you make them more productive rather than less productive. Go back and look at the studies of the 8th Air Force bombing Germany. The factories were more productive rather than less productive as a consequence of the bombing, because they moved underground, made them almost safe, and continued production, tripled and quadrupled production. Or if you want to look at another example, look at what the strategy in World War II really was. It wasn't daylight precision bombing to reduce German industrial capacity. That was the camouflage. What the strategy really was for, we know now from some historians who've done some really good work, and it's a brilliant strategy if you think about it, was to bring the Luftwaffe up to counter our bombers, particularly when we got the B-51 that could accompany them all the way to Germany, the deepest targets, and destroy them, destroy the Luftwaffe. And what happened? And this was the strategy. When we invaded Europe, one of the reasons we kept postponing, when we invaded Europe in 1944, there was hardly any German Air Force to contest our invasion.
Right.
Probably would have failed if there'd been a massive German Air Force to oppose it. But we destroyed them in the airs over France and Germany in the daylight precision bombing raids that they came up to oppose, and we destroyed the Luftwaffe. This is all sort of coming to light now after historians have had a chance to look at things a lot more closely and to examine strategies and techniques and tactics and so forth. But we're looking at the same thing with Iran. We're not going to defeat them with air power. So what's the follow-on, Jamal? The only follow-on that makes any sense is to put troops on the ground and march across Iran and try to really destroy their nuclear facilities, because the bombing is not going to do it. If you can't do it with B-2s flying over with huge bombs, you're not going to do it with conventional bombing. And you might just force them in the consequence to make that fateful decision. And I think they could do it in a week or 2 weeks to make a bomb. And then we're off to the races for sure, because we've got two nuclear armed states with nuclear weapons that unquestionably will probably hurl them at one another. And we're in the middle of it. This is a recipe for imperial disaster, Jamal.
Hey, Jamal, let me just give you another fact to add on to what Larry said. And I thank you for promoting deadly betrayal. And that's how I got on this crusade. You know, in Iraq, based on a lie on behalf of Israel, 4,500 U.S. military men and women died in that war based on a lie on behalf of Israel. I laid out in deadly betrayal what Larry just alluded to. Iran was saved for last. That was a fact. They're the last piece of that puzzle. The Israelis wanted us to go after Iran first. But once again, we said, no, 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 no. Why we didn't want to go after them first? Because we knew it would be as difficult as Larry has just mentioned. Now, when you asked about boots on the ground, Larry said, hey, that's the only way we're going to be able to get rid of Iran. Now, why did we save Iran for last? Well, because of the fact that Saddam, as some said, was hated in his country. You know, we could bring them together. You know, remember to say, oh, we'll be welcomed, you know, when we go into Iraq. Assad, well, we had a strategy. You know, we could possibly, you know, cause a civil war, which happened. Fact, it happened. Assad is gone. Now with Iran, yeah, they may not like their leadership, but they love their country. And we knew that they would come together. It wouldn't be as easy as going in and taking out Saddam, who they felt was hated. You know, they had folks that really Saddam had to be a dictator, if you will, to keep the Shias. You know, it was predominantly Shia. You know, and Saddam and the group that were leading them was Sunnis, and so they felt they had a fair chance. We can go in and take out Saddam. We had a regime change policy that was really done under the Clinton administration. So we had all the justification in the world, but we still didn't do it until, guess what, 9/11. Now, with that said, the people of Iran, as we saw with the attack, we were fearful of this going back in those days, that they would come together. And yes, they did. And so the Iranian people will come together, and it's going to be hard. And the only way to do it is boots on the ground. And as I mentioned, the reason I wrote my book and got on this crusade, 4,500 military men and women died in the Iraq war. Imagine boots on the ground, a larger country, a mountainous country, how many of our military personnel will die in a war that would be based on a lie talking about a nuclear weapon, which they don't have, which Larry said now, as I've been on record saying, I don't blame them. It'll be prudent for them to build one now, to be quite frank with you. But imagine us putting boots on the ground in Iran. That 4,500 will be doubled and tripled. And oh, by the way, I've been convinced now, Jamal, I'm going to just give you a credit again that, hey, we can blow up one of those carriers out there. Well, I've been convinced now that, yeah, they can. And oh, by the way, there's approximately, 4 or 5, I know at least 4,000, up to 6,000 people on one of those carriers. Think if one of those were hit. So I'm on this crusade. I'm having a tough time. I'm not winning right now to stop us from a full-fledged war in Iran. But it looks as though we're headed that way.
How do they expect to get, 1 million men into position to get to Iran without being hit by long-range weapon fire? I mean, if they're building up somewhere, certainly they know Iran is going to respond. They're not, well, I don't know what Pezeshkian, to be honest. He may just sit there and wait. But all things being equal, if they have any sense in them, they would hit those troops the moment that it becomes clear that the United States is trying to build up, right? Or what am I missing something?
Let me just make a comment before Larry jump in on that. And yeah, you're right. It took some time to build the forces to go into Iraq. And as I've stated, and it's in the book, Saddam didn't really believe we would attack. And so that gave us, that time to be able to get all the forces in place. And by the time he realized that we were serious, he sent a team to reach out, in fact, to a guy, Richard Pearl, to say, hey, listen, we'll give you anything you want, mining rights, whatever you want to not attack us. But no, the neocons and their plan was already in place, and they attacked Iraq. I don't think we will have that surprise now with Iran. I really don't. And so I think it would be stupidity, if you will. That's why I'm on this crusade. But look who we have as a SecDef right now. Okay? Look who we have as a SecDef right now. Look at this entire administration. Our only hope will be if the military leadership will put a stop to this. That's the only way. That is the only way. Because the administration is in place to do whatever Trump wants to do, or the administration in place that are big supporters of the neocons and the Zionist lobbyists in our United States of America. You look at Rubio, he's bought and paid for. He wants to be president one day. You look at Hegseth. I mean, there's just no hope in our administration and the National Security Council we have in place today.
Colonel Wilkerson, how would they even do this? Where would these troops be stationed? Where would they initiate?
Well,
I guess the buildup, because the buildup will have to take place. They can't attack with 5,000 guys. How would this even work?
We have the largest troop input, troop processing, forward movement facility in the world in Kuwait. Still there from when we did what Dennis just said. But let me reemphasize what Dennis just said. Took us 6 months, and we had a far better, infinitely better military at that time. But it took us 6 months. We rotated National Guard units through the National Training Center in California before we would let them go. We even flunked one and wouldn't let it go. It was from Georgia, and Sam Nunn raised up and said, "You can't do that." And Powell said, "I just did it." And we substituted a Texas National Guard unit and sent them to Barstow to get their training. 6 months. And 625,000 people in the Ultimate Coalition, including the French, the Syrians, the Egyptians. We had a huge army. Could Saddam have hit it? He didn't really have the facilities with which to hit it, other than Scud missiles and maybe a few pilots who probably would have taken off and flown the other way because they weren't about to go after those forces. They were well protected in the marshalling areas. We do not have any of that today. Period. We do not. We don't even have an Army or a Marine Corps that would be big enough to marshal. And who, Jamal? With Europe falling apart right now, Macron just lost his government. With Europe falling apart, with NATO falling apart, who is going to follow us this time? It's going to be us. And maybe those perfidious British who put 10,000 troops in there. And we will be alone. And you say, where will we marshal? Well, if we marshal in the same spots we did for that one, Iran, Iran will destroy us, and maybe Iraq too.
Yeah.
They got all joined in. You know, what we'll do is we'll do a typical U.S. amphibious operation, putting Marines ashore with soldiers to follow, and that's it. I war planned in those Zagros Mountains in the 70s and the 80s. I know how difficult that terrain is. I know that is the terrain that almost killed Alexander the Great. That is rough terrain. It's 5.5, 6 times as big as Iraq. It's 90 million people as opposed to 26 million. It's not a desert you can fly over and find targets and shoot everybody in sight. It's not a place conducive to our type of warfare like Iraq was because of the desert and such. Our tanks in Iraq, Jamal, outrange Iraq's tanks by 1,000 meters. The Abrams could go along at full speed and target the T-72 in the distance at, 2,800, 3,000 meters even, and PK of about 95%, blow them up. It got so bad, the Iraqi tanks, when they saw us coming, ran the other way, and then we hit them with air power. So this is not going to be the same war. It's going to be an utter disaster. And guess what? If we try to go to conscription, you see what Congress is doing right now with the selective service system? They're trying, and they're just a vote or two short right now to eliminate the selective service system altogether, to not have it, period. They won't even talk about putting women in the selective service system, which should have been a long time ago. But this Defense Department is certainly not disposed to do that. So where are you going to get your troops? The 18 to 24-year-olds, the moment you announce a draft, if you can, they're going to go to Mexico or Canada. They're not about to get in this business. Exactly what Dennis said. They're going to die for nothing. They're going to die for Bibi Netanyahu. They're going to die for the Levant. They're going to die for oil in the Levant. No, the rat's out with regard to that. Look at the surveys the Army conducts of these young people and what they say why they want to enlist. So, Jamar, I've just touched the surface. We're looking at an absolute imperial disaster if we do this.
Yeah. Hey, let me just add to that, Jamal, going back to that history. We have less trained forces now as well. And I got to tell you, we abused the Guard and Reserve. We could have won that war if we did win in Iraq if it wasn't for the Guard and Reserve. We extended them on active duty longer than what we should have. We abused the Guard and Reserve. And likewise, on the active duty force, to understand, I'll just break it down in plain language. When their enlistment was up at the time, we involuntarily extended the active duty past their time of separation to keep them in this war. That's what we did to the troops back during the Iraq war. What will we do to them now? And once again, that is why I'm on this crusade. Now, let me just mention, I said the only thing that could probably save us from this stupidity, if it was decided to do this, I said, I hope our military, our Joint Chiefs of Staff, raising Cain, and those that he's leading could put a stop to this. But the other, which I was pleasantly surprised to see, I think today, that there was a repeal vote in the House about the, the authorization use of force that we put in the president's hand to go to war at any time. So I don't know if y'all saw that, but I think there was a vote today that came out of the House, surprisingly. It passed. Majority Democrats, but as you know, a lot of Republicans had to come in. They had to present it. And so if that goes over to the Senate, I think the last time, it stalled for a while in the Senate. But so that could save us too. Maybe there's some folks in the Congress that now they're getting some sense in their head. But I think there was a vote to repeal the authorization use of force that puts it only in the president's hand to go to war.
Well, I guess the last question on this is other countries. I mean, do you see this? Iran is integral to anything that Russia and China is trying to create in regards to this kind of new world. Do you see them getting pulled into it, or do you see them just giving resources? Like, meaning, does it rise to the level of national security for Russia specifically? China is always a little bit more, less inclined, but do you see this rising to the level where they would get further ensconced or involved? Or do you see them just giving Iran assistance in order to kind of drag the U.S. into their own Vietnam, but not necessarily directly militarily getting involved.
Jamal, let me give you a really pointed answer to that. You know my theory. My theory is that power is leaving the West and going to the East.
Yes.
And it is demonstrably so in terms of Russia, China, and to a certain extent now India. But I'm going to hold this up. You can't, your viewers can't see it that well, but look at the railroads. This is a picture, and it's older. It's about 7, 8 years old. So it's much more advanced than this. But all of these railroads go from China through Russia or from China through the Caucasus and Central Asia to places like Warsaw and Berlin, and points east of that even, and points west of that even. This is the new world.
Yeah.
One of these goes all the way to Iran and all the way up the Persian Gulf, which is very much being contested right now, and we're worried like hell about it, and changes the entire dynamic of world productive goods, where they originate and where they go and how they go. Putting all of this on land changes a whole strategic picture too, because who dominates still pretty much the international oceans? The U.S. Navy. Right. How do you avoid the U.S. Navy? You go by rail over land. And oh, by the way, overland by rail is a lot cheaper than going by sea, especially when you have to go through things like the Red Sea and the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal or whatever. China and Russia and India now are all interlinked by these railroads, which are flowing north, central, south central, and southern through all these other countries and taking China's produce, which is the major produce in the world now, to all manner of places, including Western Europe. They are interested. That's my answer to your question. They are very interested.
And let me just add, when you say China, would it be in their national security interest? And I was going to say it in one word, and Larry just laid it out. It would be in China's economic interest, not only what Larry just laid out, but for all purposes too, for China. In regards to Russia, where, as you know, Iran has helped Russia in their war with Ukraine, providing weapon systems. And so during the last attack by Israel, from what I'm told now, I'm giving you an assumption that Russia was willing to help Iran, but Iran said, no, we got this. We got this. We got this. And so now, if it should happen again, I think Iran will take that support and help. Now, with that said, also, China traditionally is a non-interventionist country. Yes. But I think that in some ways, maybe will it be political support, the United Nations or any other way, so maybe providing, material support. I think China would do that, but I think Russia would go as far as actually, providing whatever they need.
Gentlemen, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I appreciate you both giving it your very good explanations and everything else, and I deeply appreciate it, honestly. It's terrifying on some level because it seems that the U.S. is about to get embroiled into a larger Middle Eastern conflict again, not learning from the last one where we spent, $10 trillion in order for Afghanistan aid to be taken back by the Taliban, and for Iraq to try to kick us out over and over again, vote after vote after vote that we fundamentally ignore. But we'll see. Hopefully.
All remember, as in Iraq, the 4,500 military men and women that were killed, and also likewise in Afghanistan, the 1,000 that were killed there, and then the millions of combined of the Afghanistanians and the Iraqis that died based on lies on behalf of Israel.
And without consequence.
Let me throw an optimistic note out there. It might be really, really far stretched, but I want to throw it out there. Donald Trump could ensure his place in history, positive place in history, if he stops this. if he says there will be no war with Iran. Then you got to worry about Bibi, because I think he will go rogue at that point and he will start it. But that's Israel. And we lose our attack dog in the Levant. But losing that attack dog in the Levant and maybe keeping some of our other allies in the region is better than going down with Bibi in Iran. So if Trump has that instinct, if he has that instinct and the courage to do that at the last minute, as it were, we could salvage the situation.
And if he did that, I will support his Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, me too.
From your mouth to God's ears. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you for this. We have Command Chief Dennis Fritz, retired Command Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force, former Director of the Eisenhower Media Network with the mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. You can get his book, which is fantastic. The guest that I have coming on now has raved about it. Sarah Bills. It's called Deadly Betrayal: The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. And we also have Col Lawrence Wilkerson. He's the former Distinguished Visiting Professor of Government and Public Policy at the College of William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. He is probably best known as a retired United States Army Colonel and former Chief of Staff to United States Secretary of State Colin Powell. Extraordinary men. You guys have a fantastic day. Be safe.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye. All right. That was a great conversation, actually. I appreciate both of these guys for coming.